Hello, everyone. My name is William Lane, and I am currently a second semester senior at the University of Michigan, located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Over the last decade, we have seen a significant increase in a plethora of sexually transmitted diseases amongst American citizens, particularly amongst young adults. As most of you know, sexually transmitted diseases are not a laughing matter, for they can lead to many serious health issues and in some cases can even lead to death. Being a college student at the University of Michigan, I know quite a few individuals who've contracted various sexually transmitted diseases. Some of these unfortunate individuals have been diagnosed with chlamydia, while others have been diagnosed with gonorrhea. However, one common thing that these individuals share is a lack of sexual education in their respective high schools. Today, I'm going to describe in depth to each and every one of you the recent sexually transmitted disease statistics of Americans, how these numbers are caused by a lack of sexual education programs in the United States, and the ways that America could fix this issue once and for all. After hearing what I have to say, I hope you view this topic in a more realistic and truthful light. As I had just mentioned, there is an alarming rate of STD diagnoses amongst American youths. According to an article published by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as CDC, they say that chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis have all increased for the first time in 2014 since the year 2006. As depicted in the figure provided by the CDC to my right, in 2016 alone, there was 1.6 million reported cases of chlamydia, 468,000 cases of gonorrhea, and approximately 28,000 reported cases of various forms of syphilis. Everyone should take a step back and think about these numbers for a second. In the United States, there is approximately 323.1 million people living within its various states. I have just provided all of you with the statistics for only 3 sexually transmitted diseases. If you take into account the fact that there are at least 24 other known sexually transmitted diseases, these numbers are much, much larger. According to a report written by Bahar Gulupur for LiveScience.com, there are nearly 20 million cases of newly sexually transmitted diseases infections each and every year. In total, 110 million men and women in the United States have some form of a sexually transmitted disease. Furthermore, according to the same report, 50% of these new infections are occurring in individuals that are between the ages of 15 and 24. That means for all the parents in the crowd here today, there's a chance that your children could become infected by one of these horrendous, gross diseases. So why should you be concerned, you may ask? You should all be concerned because of the myriad of serious health consequences associated with these diseases. According to a blog article written by Christina Ducre for STDcheck.com, she talks about the worst case scenarios for various sexually transmitted diseases. For example, when left untreated, chlamydia is associated with an increased risk of HIV, infertility, miscarriage, and much more. Furthermore, gonorrhea is associated with similar health consequences as people with chlamydia. However, children born to mothers with gonorrhea are at increased risk of being blind, having serious joint infections, as well as have deadly blood infections. As a last example, syphilis can cause internal bleeding, enlargement of the liver, loss of motor functions, dementia, seizures, and even death. So I hope now each and every one of you have an idea of some of the health consequences associated with sexually transmitted diseases. I am now going to explain to all of you what is causing this alarming rate of STD diagnoses, as well as the ways that we can decrease this trend. At this point, I hope that at least some of you have begun to ask the question as to what is causing this increase in STD diagnoses in America. The answer is that all states are not required to implement sexual education programs, and in the states where it is required, they often do not meet the recommendations put forth by the CDC. According to data collected by the Guttmacher Institute, only 24 states and the District of Columbia require public schools to teach sexual education. This data is presented on the figure to my right. As you can see, less than half of the states in the United States require sexual education courses to be taught in public schools. Furthermore, A study conducted by the same institute found that fewer teens are now being exposed to important and timely information about sexual education topics than in the past. Are you now beginning to gain an understanding of what is causing this increasing rate of STD in America? It's that our younger generations aren't receiving the sexual education courses necessary to properly teach them about the dangerous consequences of engaging in sexual activity. Not providing sexual education to teenagers is akin to not teaching about the dangers of cigarette smoking or driving under the influence of alcohol. It would be negligent for a school not to discuss the health implications or safety hazards involved with either of those public health issues. Additionally, according to an article written by Maddie Quinn for governing.com, less than half of U.S. high school students and only 1/5 of middle school students are meeting the recommendations put forth by the CDC in terms of sexual education. As you can see in this chart to my right, there is a relatively few number of states amongst those who require it that teach all 16 recommended sexual education topics. Now, in terms of how to stop this alarming rate of STDs amongst Americans, the solution is simple. Make sexual education programs mandatory for all schools throughout the United States. While some parents could object to having their children be subjected to sexual education courses in fear of them learning at too early of an age about sexual activity, it is better to educate children early on so that they can know of the negative consequences that are associated with their actions. Sexual education programs must be required to be implemented in each and every school across America. While we can wait for each state to individually pass their own sexual education laws, it will be both quicker and more beneficial if a federal law was passed that mandates the implementation of sexual education courses in high schools. Furthermore, these schools must be required to teach all 16 of the CDC recommendations in order to ensure that they have sufficient knowledge about the topic. Once this is done, I am sure that the rates of STDs amongst American youth will decrease, and thus our future generations will be much healthier. So, in summary, I have explained to all of you the issue of rising STD rates amongst American youth, as well as providing sufficient information that supports the argument that sexual education courses should be required in every high school in the United States. I implore each and every one of you to understand this argument and how it is essential for these sexual education programs to be required by law to be implemented in U.S. high schools. While a few people are against required sexual education in fear of their children being exposed to sexual content at too early of an age, the requirement of sexual education in high schools is absolutely necessary in order to protect the health of our future generations. I hope that all of you have come to the understanding that this is not just a take on a controversial topic, but instead is a fact that illustrates just how essential it is for American youths to be educated about sexual education in order to protect their health. I hope all of you have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoyed my speech. Thank you.